So our first presenter from clinical practice is Miss Breda Crotty. Breda is a CNM 3 from the University Maternity Hospital in Waterford. Breda, thank you.
I'm going to speak from the heart really about my journey in metrics, because I hope it comes across when I'm talking to you how important this journey has been for me personally and professionally. I spent a lot of my time in South Tip General Hospital, where I kind of did the early part of my career in maternity services, and then I ended up going to Waterford in October 2014 as a CMM3. So that was a promotional post for me, so it was really important for me that I did a good job in the step up that I was taking on. Now, when I worked in Clonmel, I was involved in clinical risk, and I was also involved in a lot of other aspects of practice development in the maternity services. So quality of care is really, really important to me as a nurse and a midwife. At the end of the day, the patient in the bed who's who were really important in looking after. So when I came across the metrics, the whole idea of data collecting, continuous auditing cycle, looking at care, quality improvement, reviewing and going back again really, really appeared to my mindset. So why metrics for me? We all know healthcare is extremely complex. Every day is very different. Every minute brings different challenges. At the beginning, I understood that metrics for me would help me ascertain standards of care and enhance care delivery. So I wouldn't have to follow my midwives around. I'd know what they were doing, and I know the nature of the care they were given was evidence-based, best practice and a good job. I was intrigued. I said, right, this is a map for me to make sure my journey of every patient's journey through my service is going to be good. I was keen to see how I could foster a culture of quality improvement and continually review our standards of care. So how did I know that every midwife that I was talking to on the floor knew exactly what she was doing and that she was on point as regards her evidence-based practice? I understood that metrics was a mode of data collecting, that it would reassure me in my role that we were achieving high standards of care and looking after our patients. So in my mind, it was a win for me as the manager, it was a win for my patient, the mum and the baby and all the families, and it was a win for my midwives. And also the safety aspect of it was really, really important to me. So the journey started. I was only a wet week in the maternity services in Waterford, and metrics came down the road, and I was handed it as a kind of a project to get moving on it. What I really need to say about Waterford, it's a co-located site, so we're working in tandem with the general side. So we have the maternity services and we have the general side, so we work kind of well together. But there was kind of a bit aspects of care that we were kind of looking at together across the site, and you'll see that when I come to my quality improvements. So every month we do an auditing schedule on all aspects of the hospital, and the audits include hygiene audits, sharps audits, CPR trolley audits, we do fire audits, every audit, there's a lot of audits, and then we had metrics. For quality of care though, metrics was probably the most important thing that I got involved in. So every month I was like the dog out of the traps, running to do my charts to see where were we this month, what was I going to do. So the thing about it is I ended up in the CNM2's office doing the auditing myself, so there was no point in me taking full ownership of this, so I had to include everybody across the service with what I was doing. So I shared my results with the CMM2 at my every second week operational meetings. I displayed my results on the notice board with the colour code dashboard, so they could see exactly what we were achieving. Green was good, yellow not so good, and red was a big no-no, a red flag. So when it was in the common area of the unit, it wasn't just me or the CNM2s that knew how we were doing. Every midwife walking past the board could say, oh, we're not doing so well in medication prescription this month, or what's wrong with our plan of care. So I tried to make sure that everybody was in the know about what metrics were about and how they were actually, in real terms, quantifying the care at the bedside. So the action plans then had to be generated. There was no point doing my auditing unless I did my action plans, and any gaps then or issues in the midwifery care then was being actioned, and I looked at the times line and then I went back and revisited them. But next month I did the same again. So I was very quality assured myself in my heart that what I was doing was good, and the continuous cycle really appealed to me. Now sometimes the CMM2 would find that they were revisiting the same problems, but that was the whole beauty of the system, because we knew that we were eventually going to get there in whatever aspect of care we were looking at. So once the metric situation was embedded in the unit, I handed it over to the CMM2s because they had to take ownership. They had to be liaising with the midwives on the floor about what they were doing. There was no point in me having all my data in an office, and that's why putting it in a public area was really important to me. And I made sure that the CMM2s relayed all their results every month to the staff on the ground, just so that they were involved as frontline caregivers. So what did we identify? there was recurring issues in relation to medication prescriptions, and I'm sure everybody here in the room that's in practice will relate to that. In Waterford, we have midwife prescribers, we also have nurse prescribers, and we also have our colleagues, the NCHDs and the doctors. But if we had poor prescribing, it was impacting on midwifery care. There was a delay. I'd go into postnatal, I'd see 5 or 6 charts with post-its on it. Please reorder this. So, delaying given medications, as we all know, is a clinical risk. So that was a big issue. So for us, that was a red flag very early on in the fight. Then there was other queries. When I was doing the metrics, what did the plan of care reflecting the patient's current condition really mean? Abbreviations then caused some confusions. For example, vaginal exam is what VE is in maternity, whereas VE in the HSE Code of Practice for Healthcare Records Management is actually ventricular ectopic. So midwives are a particular breed, and we all know that. So I was there going through my metrics journey. I had poor Leonie, our local project lead, annoyed and annihilated with regular queries. I kept ringing her and emailing her, seeking clarification and advice because I wanted to make sure that my data collecting was right. Okay, so coming down the track after all my queries, the national project loomed, and I was very lucky to be asked to take part in this, and this was really important to me because I had so many questions from day one. So I said, right, now's my chance, I can have my speak and I can go up there and say what's important to me. So back at base, I was telling my midwives and my CMM2s that I was going to be involved in a national project. Sounds really, really important, and for me it was. But I was the link, and I was the one that was getting feedback from them on the issues that they were also highlighting to me. So it was really important to me that everybody on the floor was involved in this. So I was like an annoying fly going around saying, have you been online? Have you returned your query? There's a lot of staff in Waterford. We're very lucky that are educated to master's level. So I got them encouraged to look at all the literature that was out there and to feedback. We're also very lucky that we had an advanced midwife practitioner. So any academic queries at all, I go to Janet about, you probably all know her. So there was a general consensus from right across the service. I tried to get everybody involved. But the people that I also tried to reach were the very junior midwives who were toddling up and down the corridor going about their business. And I'd go up and I'd say, do you know about metrics? What's your opinion on this? So everybody was encouraged. They're all on email, so they were all involved in the journey. So as I said, frontline staff encouraged and lobbied to engage in this process, and that was a big and onerous task for me, but it was really important to me that I achieved that. Meanwhile, I continued to collect the data. So coming back to our co-located site, in Waterford we have regular quality and safety and risk meetings, and they're actually held among the directorates across the service, and this allows us a forum to compare the various trends across the service. So it's not really competition, but it is in a way because we're actually displaying our results, and it happens among the senior nurse management team. And actually it's really helpful because it gives us all a chance to share information. And even though other aspects of the service are looking at acute care, me in maternity, it's interesting to share our results and just see where we were at. Guess what? Medication prescription errors was a common reoccurring theme. Like, we were all mithered, to be honest, about what was coming up. So what happened next was a quality initiative project ensued with the assistance of the pharmacy department. Metrics doesn't just impart on nursing and midwifery care. I mean, it certainly is MDT for my prescription, as I said. Anyway, coming back to the medication, we got a medication safety committee up and running, and that feeds into the drugs and therapeutics committee. We have a very good medication safety pharmacist whose name is Anne, who's really helpful in this aspect. So the prescription policy was updated and it's uploaded on QPulse for all staff. There's a quick link to QPulse, I don't know, do you all use it, on every desktop across the service, so nobody has any excuse to not be up to date with the up-to-date policy. So I just wanted to make sure that nurses and midwives were very happy with what good medication management policies are. A very important aspect then that was generated across the service was an e-learning programme in relation to Prescribing. And basically it's an online programme that is there for nurse midwife prescribers and for all medical personnel to learn good prescription techniques. And I have a screenshot of it in a minute, and that was a huge body of work. And it sounds like it's very simple, but good prescribing is so important. So there was also a generation of a very specific medication incident report form. And this is reported on quarterly from the incident side of things, from a clinical risk perspective and from the pharmacy. So across directorates we could see what the data was showing us, and we could track and trend where we were going with our medication incidents and identify problems. Okay, this is just a screenshot of our updated medication prescribing policy. There was a lot of work put in that, getting it up to date. And that's just how it looks when you click into it. It's very user-friendly. Okay, this slide now is my medication incident report form. Now, everybody's familiar with the clinical risk system of reporting incidents, and I know we have a new form at the moment, but I think to quantify the medication incidents on their own is really relevant practice. So this was a big body of work that came out of the metrics across the co-located sites in Waterford. So what happens, this report, is every month they're collated by the pharmacy and by the clinical risk lady, Liz Luckhurst is her name, and we look at our data and our trends. Now, this form is extremely comprehensive. You can't really see it very clearly there, but basically anybody can report a medical incident, what actually happened, who you reported to, what actions comes out of it, and then at the back there we quantify where it was. And these incident report forms are on our drug trolleys, and they're hugely helpful because they're very easily accessible. So every quarter then we get a report, and when we look at the report we know who's reporting the medication incidents and what actions we're taking as a result. So that was a big body of work. Now here's my screenshot of my e-learning module. It might sound very simplistic, that people would learn how to do prescribing online, but it's absolutely been hugely helpful. Now, it's only been rolled out at the moment, so it hasn't actually been audited, and it's been managed by the pharmacist, Anne, that I mentioned earlier. But I think it's a huge body of work and a really important quality initiative for Waterford that have come out of the metrics. Okay, so coming back to maternity, I know the medication aspect was really important, but it definitely assisted in focusing on midwifery care for all of us in the system, and it focused on all aspects of care from booking to delivery, postnatally and discharge. And as I said already, it generated a lot of questions and queries for me, and hence the national project. So it was reassuring through that journey that I was able to quantify care delivery and outcomes numerically, and it gave me assurance on standards of care. But the whole idea of the launch of the new metrics is really important to me because I know where my future lies. Another thing that came out for me was documentation. Everybody knows about how important good documentation is, and I have to say, when I was reviewing the charts, I was able to see up close and personal where the errors were happening. People are all guided by NMBI, as we know about proper documentation. So on foot of that, we generated record-keeping education as part of our rolling maternity unit education sessions. There's a very robust education system for midwives in our unit. We're very lucky. And it's supported by our AMP and by all midwives across the service that have various aspects of knowledge. So when it comes to documentation, we have a rolling system of education, and anybody who's got any issues with documentation, if I found it in the metrics, I would encourage them to go to an education session either on the Tuesday morning or on the Friday morning, and that was very helpful. I'd had to say that I did actually address documentation issues with the staff members in question because I had to. There was no point in highlighting it without going to speak to them, and then I sent them off to their education. Another big initiative that came out of it was a list of locally agreed midwifery abbreviations. I've already made reference to abbreviations, and I suppose we are a particular set of people who practice in a certain way. So it was very important that we got a standardised list for the local use, which we did, and we approved through our local governance procedures. So that's available for all the midwives. Definitely medication management has been enhanced and improved by our metrics collection, and it helps maintain standards of care generally, I would think. Now that's just a screenshot of my recent metrics collection. I think that's the delivery suite actually. And you can see there is a yellow there, which was in June, and that's medication prescription. And I mean, no matter what you do, that's the whole idea of an audit cycle, so there is an action plan in place around that. And we're going to have a new set of doctors coming in July, so we'll be making sure that they all get onto the e-learning module. So I have to say, at the end of my journey, I was very glad to be involved in this. It's something I'm very passionate about, because if you don't have an audit cycle, implementation of an action plan, a review, and a constant system whereby you see where you're at and where you're going, you're at nothing. At the end of the day, there's lots of ways of ascertaining how your practice is going. I do walkabouts regularly and I meet the patients, but something like this that is numerically quantified, that is on paper, that has action plans as a result, that is continuously reviewed, is a wonderful asset to all of us in our practice. That's what I feel anyway. And I hope you understand that my passion comes out in this because it gave me a blueprint in my job, and that was really important to me, because at the end of the day, the patient in the bed has to get good quality, safe care, and that's what's important to all of us here. Thank you for listening to me.